When I was 16, my parents blamed me for my brother's detention, said I was a negative influence, and sent me to live with relatives without a phone. I lived and went to school. Years later, they urged me to be his lawyer in court, only to find out that I was the lawyer they had tried to bury. Hey, Reddit. This is perhaps the best thing that has ever happened to me. I've had this story for a few weeks now and have been trying to figure out how to tell it. Get ready, because this is going to be a ride. I'm 29 now, but this narrative starts when I was 16 and my younger brother Jackson was 14. You need to know how the family worked when we were kids to understand how we got here. From the very beginning, Jackson was the best. I'm talking about the youngster who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I was the responsible one, the one who was supposed to set the example, help out around the house, and be a built-in free babysitter. Jackson failed to do his schoolwork since he was fatigued from practice for athletics. I was being irresponsible when I forgot to do mine, and I needed to learn how to better manage my time. My parents would tell Jackson that he did his best when he received a C on an exam. I'd get a lecture about not trying hard enough when I got a B. You get the idea. This is a classic case of the golden child and the scapegoat. The point is, I didn't mind being the one in charge. I was proud of it. I got on the honor roll every semester. I worked part-time at the grocery store in my town. I didn't get into any difficulty. At the same time, Jackson was getting into more and more dumb things. At first, nothing big, just normal teenage disobedience. Not going to class, talking back to teachers, and spending time with kids who were obviously bad news. I tried to tell my parents about Jackson's buddies. Brandon was 17 and had already been caught shoplifting as a minor. Kevin, another one, has been suspended twice for fighting. These were not healthy influences, and anyone with half a brain could see that Jackson was starting to act differently around them. He was more secretive, more aggressive, and more inclined to breach the rules. But every time I talked to my parents, they ignored me. I was feeling jealous. I was very protective. I have to let Jackson have friends and make his own decisions. Once, my mom encouraged me to be more like Jackson and stop being so uptight all the time. She said I should learn to relax and have fun. Yes, Mom. I'll take care of that right now. Things became worse in the summer before my junior year. Jackson had recently graduated from 8th grade and was preparing to enter high school. Brandon, Kevin, and a few other youngsters from their group began to come over to our house more often. My parents enjoyed it because they felt Jackson was making friends and becoming social. I felt it was going to be a disaster. I worked the closing shift at the grocery store one night in July. I came home at about 10:30 p.m. and the house was still. I thought Jackson was in his room because my parents were watching TV in the living room. I walked upstairs, did what I usually do, and went to bed around midnight. I woke up to sounds downstairs at about 2 a.m. Not loud voices, but that urgent whispering that suggests something is really wrong. I got out of bed and quietly walked to my bedroom door. I opened it just enough to hear what was going on. I heard my dad say, "Yes, this is about Jackson. We'll be right there." Then there was a lot of noise and commotion. My parents hurried out of the house as doors opened and closed. I saw them drive away quickly in my dad's car when I peered out my window. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I was just sitting in my room with the door open, waiting. Around 5 a.m., they got home. I heard my mother sobbing. My dad yelled at me, and then Jackson. My brother was crying in a way I'd never heard before. Not the kind of crying you do when you're sad, but the kind you do when you're scared. I stayed in my room. I felt like I should stay silent and not get involved until I knew what had happened. My dad knocked on my door around 7 a.m. and instructed me to get dressed and come down. Meeting with the family. This is where everything went wrong. Jackson and his smart buddies had determined to breach into the high school, it turns out. Not to take anything big. They weren't very smart. Brandon had a problem with the principal. Therefore they decided to break into his office. They shattered a window to get in, spray-painted some walls, knocked over filing cabinets, and were presumably trying to get into the principal's computer when the alarm from the security company went off. The police found all 4 of them still inside. They found Jackson with a can of spray paint in his hand. Caught red-handed. This is an open and shut case. My parents made me sit down in the living room. Jackson was there too, and he looked like he was going to die. He kept his head down the whole time, and his eyes were red from sobbing. My dad was walking back and forth, and my mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in one night. Then my dad said something that scared me. "We need to talk about how you got Jackson to do this." I believed he was joking, so I laughed. He wasn't. My parents then went on to tell me how this was somehow my fault. They said that my frequent criticism of Jackson's buddies had made the house a bad place to be. I had made Jackson feel like he had to show me what he could do. I had been a horrible role model because I worked too much and didn't spend enough time with my brother. Jackson acted out because he thought I didn't back him when I spoke about his pals. It took a lot of mental gymnastics to come to this conclusion. I attempted to protect myself. I told them that I had actively warned them about this very thing. I told them that Brandon was a problem. I told them Jackson needed better boundaries, but they didn't listen. They thought they needed to blame someone other than their beloved golden child. And I was the easy target. My mom said, if you had been a better big brother, Jackson would never have felt the need to seek approval from those boys. Jackson just sat there and didn't say anything. Didn't stand up for me. Didn't correct them. Nothing. He let people blame me for what I had fought to stop from happening. That's when they let the real bomb drop. I was going to live with my aunt and uncle in another state. My parents said I had to leave so Jackson could focus on getting his life back on track without me being a bad influence. They had already talked to my aunt, who had agreed to take me in for as long as it took. I had a week to get my things ready. They were taking me away from my school, my career, and everything else I knew. And the worst part was that they were removing my phone, so I couldn't talk to my friends, use social media, or do anything else. They told me to think about what I did wrong and how I could be a better family member. I was 16 years old and being kicked out of my own family for something I didn't do and had tried to stop. The worst aspect was that Jackson had to stay in his residence and do community service. He got to stay home with our parents, who would help him get through this tough period. I was sent away. It took 6 hours to go to my aunt and uncle's house. We didn't talk the whole time because my dad was driving. When we arrived there, he gave my aunt a packet with my school and medical data, hugged me awkwardly on the side, and told me to think about what you've done. Aunt Julie and Uncle Robert were nice, but they were clearly not happy with the whole thing. They lived in a little 3-bedroom house in the country in Pennsylvania and let me stay in the guest room. They were both in their 50s, had grown kids who had previously moved out, and weren't ready to have a teenager living with them. The first few weeks were hard. Without a phone, I couldn't talk to anyone from my past. My aunt and uncle had a landline, but my parents warned them not to allow me use it unless it was an emergency. I couldn't call my buddies, check in with my old job at the grocery shop, or do anything else. It felt like I was cut off from the rest of the world. One time I tried to email my buddies using my aunt's computer, but she had been told to keep an eye on my internet use. My parents didn't want me to tell folks back home my side of the story, so they cut me off, both in person and online. I was entirely alone in a time when social media and continual interaction were the norm. Not knowing what others were saying was the toughest part. Did my pals wonder why I was gone? Did my parents tell everyone that I was a problem and had to leave? Was anyone back home standing up for me? Or did everyone just believe what my parents said? In late August, school started, and I signed up for my junior year at the local high school. I didn't know a single person. I was the strange new kid who came to school 3 weeks into the year with no phone or social media. It was almost tough to make friends. I performed my homework and ate lunch by myself, and I spent much of my spare time in my room. The other youngsters didn't know what to think of me. When they asked me where I was moving from, I would give them vague answers about my family. When they inquired for my social media accounts, I told them I didn't have any. That was like saying you didn't believe in electricity in 2012. They would look at me like I was an alien. The teachers were also confused. This youngster had great grades in school until this one. It's clear that he is brilliant and capable, but he is entirely alone in social situations. More many once, I saw my guidance counselor watching me eat lunch alone. He was probably contemplating if he should step in. But I wasn't being picked on. I was by myself. There is no help for that. But here's the issue with being alone like that. It offers you a lot of time to think about things. I had a lot on my mind. I thought about how my parents had always treated me. How nothing I did was ever good enough, while Jackson earned accolades for the least amount of work he did. How they'd blame me for what he did wrong instead of making him pay for it. How they would have tossed me away like trash when it fit their story. And I became mad. Not the kind of rage that makes you do dumb things because it's so fierce and explosive. The kind of fury that makes you concentrated and cold. I concluded that it was okay if they wanted to get rid of me. But I was going to succeed even though they were there. Not because they were there. I worked hard at school. I was already a decent student. But I became really into it. I studied every night until my aunt told me to turn off the light and go to bed. I joined the debate team since I didn't have to make friends and it would look well on my college applications. I also volunteered at the local library on weekends for the same purpose. My aunt and uncle saw that something was different. After about 2 months, Uncle Robert grabbed me aside and asked whether I was okay. I told him I was okay. I was just trying to keep occupied. He looked at me with a sad face and said, "You know this isn't fair to you, right?" That was the first time anyone in my family had said that. I almost cried right there in his garage. He went on to say, "Your parents are handling this all wrong, but you're doing the right thing by focusing on school and your future. Don't let their mistakes define yours." That conversation changed something in me. I understood that I didn't have to believe everything my parents said was true. I could make my own way, and what they thought of me didn't matter. My aunt would phone my parents once a week to let them know how I was doing. I could hear her on the phone. "He is doing well in school. Again on the honor roll. Yes, he is acting like a good boy. No, he hasn't said anything about coming home." That last aspect was essential because I understood after approximately 3 months that I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to go back to a house where I was blamed for everything and never thanked for anything. So, when my aunt would inform me that my parents wanted to know when I wanted to visit, I would say that I was too busy with school. That first Christmas was strange. My parents sent me a package with some generic presents, a sweatshirt that was too big, a gift card to a restaurant that didn't exist in Pennsylvania, and a message that stated, "Hope you're learning and growing." They didn't call or video chat with me or anything personal. The package shouted, "We did the bare minimum to pretend we care." I didn't send anything back. Months went into years, and then years changed into months. My parents would sometimes call my aunt to ask about me, but they never asked to talk to me directly. I thought they were okay with the plan. They could spend all their energy on mending Jackson's life since I was out of sight and out of mind. At the same time, I was doing great in school. I got a 4.0 GPA in my junior year. In my senior year, I took all the AP classes that were offered and did well on all the tests. I wrote my college application essay about how I got through tough times and learned to depend on myself. I didn't say my parents or Jackson's names, but anyone who read between the lines might figure out what happened. I got into a good state institution and got some money to help pay for it. I could make it work, even though I wouldn't get a full ride. I could get student loans and work study. They were really happy when I told my aunt and uncle. They said they would help with anything the scholarship didn't cover, but I said no. I was determined to accomplish this on my own, even though I had been saving every dollar I could from my part-time work at the library. My aunt told my parents that I had gotten accepted to college. My mom called the house, and my aunt gave me the phone. I hadn't talked to my mom in almost 2 years before this. "Congratulations on going to college," she added in a cold voice. "I am very proud of you and your father." I almost laughed. Proud of what? The kid they abandoned? The scapegoat they blamed for their golden child's mistakes? "Thanks," I said, keeping my voice neutral. There was a long pause. Then she said, "You know, you're welcome to come home for a visit before you start school." "I'm good," I replied. "I've got a lot to prepare." Another pause. "Jackson's doing much better. He's back on track. We thought you'd want to know." What I wanted to say was, I don't care. I wanted to say, you blamed me for his mistakes and threw me away. I wanted to say you chose him over me and you don't get to act like a proud parent now. Instead, I said, that's great. I'm happy that he's doing well. I have to go now. I hung up before she could respond. I left for college that fall and never looked back. I majored in pre-law with a minor in political science. I worked 2 part-time jobs throughout college to minimize my loans. One at the campus library, another at a local coffee shop near campus. Between classes, studying, and work, I had maybe 2 hours of free time per day. But I didn't mind. Staying busy meant less time to think about everything that had happened. I had a few friends, went on a few dates, had a semi-normal college experience. My roommate freshman year was a guy named Lewis who was studying engineering. We got along fine, mainly because we were both too busy to get into each other's business. He'd be up at 2 a.m. working on problem sets while I'd be reading case law. We'd occasionally grab food together or watch a game on weekends, but mostly we just coexisted in that easy way college roommates do. Sophomore year, I moved into an apartment with 3 other guys. It was cheaper than the dorms, and I could cook my own meals instead of paying for a meal plan. I learned to make decent food on a tight budget. Lots of rice, beans, chicken, pasta. Nothing fancy, but it was fuel. I dated a girl named Rebecca for most of junior year. She was sweet, studying to be a teacher. We met in a political science class and started studying together. Eventually, studying turned into coffee dates, which turned into actual dates. She met Aunt Julie once when she came to visit for Parents' Weekend. Julie loved her, said she was good for me. Rebecca and I broke up when she realized I was never going to introduce her to my parents. She couldn't understand why I didn't talk to my family. I tried explaining it once, the whole story about being blamed and sent away, but she came from one of those close, functional families where everyone loves each other and problems get talked through. She couldn't wrap her head around the idea of parents who would do what mine did. She suggested I work on forgiving them. Maybe try family counseling. When I refused, she said I was holding on to anger that was only hurting me. We broke up about 2 weeks later. No hard feelings, just 2 people who couldn't understand each other's fundamental worldview. My focus was always on the long game, law school. I studied my behind off and made the dean's list every semester. I applied to law schools my senior year and got accepted to a good program, not Harvard or Yale, but a solid school with a strong reputation. More loans, more work study, more grinding. But I was used to it by now. Hard work was my comfort zone. Law school was brutal. First year almost broke me with the workload and competition. The Socratic method, where professors randomly call on students to answer complex legal questions in front of the entire class, was designed to be intimidating, and it worked. I watched classmates drop out, switch to part-time programs, or have complete breakdowns in the library at 2 a.m. But I remembered sitting in that guest room in Pennsylvania, angry and isolated, and I used that memory as fuel. Every time I wanted to quit, and there were many times I thought about my parents dismissing me, and it pushed me harder. When I was exhausted from pulling all-nighters to finish case briefs, I thought about that family meeting where they blamed me for Jackson's arrest. When I was stressed about exams, I remembered my mom's words about me being a bad influence. First year, I worked as a research assistant for one of my professors, helping compile case law for an article she was writing. Second year, I joined the criminal law clinic where law students work on actual cases under supervision. I represented clients who couldn't afford private attorneys, mostly juveniles accused of minor crimes. That's when I realized this was what I wanted to do with my career. Third year, I was editor of the Law Review, which meant even longer hours and less sleep. But I also secured a summer internship at a public defender office, which gave me real courtroom experience. I watched seasoned attorneys fight for clients that society had written off. I saw kids who'd made stupid mistakes get second chances because someone believed in them enough to fight for them in court. I graduated in the top 10% of my class. Passed the bar exam on my first try, which only about 60% of test takers accomplish. Got hired by a small criminal defense firm that specialized in juvenile cases. The irony wasn't lost on me. The kid who got blamed for his brother's juvenile crime was now defending juveniles accused of crimes. My first year as an actual attorney was a learning curve. I lost cases I thought I'd win and won cases I thought were hopeless. But I learned fast. I learned how to read judges, how to cross-examine witnesses, how to find the holes in a prosecutor's case. I learned that sometimes the best outcome isn't an acquit. It's getting your client into a treatment program instead of jail or getting charges reduced so they don't have a felony on their record for the rest of their lives. I worked 60-hour weeks minimum. Some weeks it was closer to 80. But I loved it. Every kid I helped felt like a small victory against the system that had failed me. Every time I got a judge to see my client as a person and not just a case number, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. By year 3, I had a reputation. Other attorneys started referring clients to me. Judges knew my name. I'd built something real from absolutely nothing. During all this time, college, law school, studying for the bar, starting my career, my parents reached out maybe a dozen times total. Birthday cards with generic messages. The occasional email asking how school was going. Once my dad called to tell me my grandmother had passed away, but we never had real conversations. They never apologized. They never acknowledged what they'd done. And I never reached out to them either. Why would I? They'd made their choice years ago. I heard through my aunt, who I stayed in close contact with, that Jackson had graduated high school, gone to community college for a year, dropped out, and was now working retail management. He'd never left our hometown. My parents still treated him like he could do no wrong, apparently. Good for him, I guess. We hadn't spoken since the day I left their house. Fast forward to 3 months ago. I'm 29 now, 3 years into my career as a defense attorney. I've built up a decent reputation in juvenile criminal defense. I win most of my cases, and the ones I don't win usually end with reduced sentences. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm doing well. I have my own apartment. I can pay my bills, and I've almost paid off my student loans. One Tuesday morning, I'm at my desk reviewing case files when my secretary tells me I have a walk-in consultation. The name on the intake form was Janet and David Stevens, my parents' names, but it didn't register at first because Stevens is a common last name. I told her to send them in, and when my office door opened and I looked up for my paperwork, I found myself staring at my mother and father. 13 years older, a lot grayer, but definitely them. The look of shock on their faces was priceless. My mom actually gasped. My dad's mouth literally fell open. They stood frozen in the doorway like they'd seen a ghost. For me, the moment was surreal. I'd imagined running into them hundreds of times over the years. In my imagination, I'd always had the perfect thing to say, the perfect way to make them understand what they'd done to me. But now that the moment was actually here, I found myself feeling strangely calm, detached almost. They looked older. Obviously, my mom's hair had gone mostly gray, and she'd gained some weight. My dad had aged harder. Deeper lines around his eyes, thinner hair, that worn-down look that comes from years of stress. They were dressed like they were going to church or a funeral. My dad in a button-down and slacks, my mom in a conservative dress, formal clothes for a serious meeting. And I just sat there pen in hand, looking at them like they were any other potential clients. Mr. and Mrs. Stevens, I said, my voice perfectly professional. Please have a seat. They stood frozen in the doorway. My mom found her voice first. Danny, is that really you? Danny? They hadn't called me that since I was a kid. I'd been going by Daniel professionally for years. Hearing that old nickname felt like someone dragging nails across a chalkboard. It's Daniel now? I corrected, keeping my tone neutral. And yes, it's me. You're here for a consultation? They stumbled into the chairs across from my desk like they'd forgotten how legs worked. My dad kept staring at me like I was a ghost. My mom had tears in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from shock or some other emotion. Maybe guilt, maybe fear. Who knows? The office felt too small suddenly. My professional space, the one place I felt completely in control, now contained the two people who'd made me feel most powerless. But I had the desk between us, my law degree on the wall behind me, my name on the door. This was my territory now, not theirs. We had no idea, my mom stammered. We've been looking for a defense attorney for weeks and someone recommended this firm and we just made the appointment and we didn't know it would be you. Her voice trailed off. She was staring at me like she had never seen me before, taking in my professional clothing, my tidy desk, and the framed law degree from a school they didn't even know I had gone to. I said, interesting, while still maintaining my tone neutral and professional. Let's talk about why you need a lawyer. They looked at each other. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and delivered what I had been waiting 13 years to hear. It's Jackson. He has been taken into custody. I lifted my eyebrows to show that I was astonished. I understand. What are the fees? My mom started to cry. This time, they're real. She was crying ugly and attempted to hide it with a tissue. It appeared like my dad had aged 10 years right in front of my eyes. He stated it quietly, embezzlement. From his job, around $45,000 over the course of 2 years. I nodded and wrote down everything they said on my legal pad. That's a big accusation. Did they catch him with proof? Or is this just an accusation? My dad said they had proof. The whole thing, including bank documents and fake invoices. His lawyer adds that if he is found guilty, he might go to prison for 2 to 5 years. I asked him who his lawyer was. So, he already has a lawyer. A lawyer for the public? My mom cried. But they don't care about him. They only want him to agree to a plea agreement. We need someone who will really fight for him. Someone who knows he's a nice person who made mistakes. I typed down additional notes, just to give myself time to think about how crazy this all is. Jackson had been taken into custody for a major offense. My parents were so desperate that they hired a private lawyer. And somehow, through some kind of cosmic justice, they had found up in my office. I now understood. I said, you want to engage me to defend your son Jackson against charges of stealing money? Quickly, my dad said yes. We realize this is weird because of what happened between us. But you're his brother and someone informed us you're one of the greatest juvenile defense lawyers in the area. And we thought, I don't handle adult cases, I said. I specialize in defending young people who have been accused of crimes. How old is your son now? 27? That's not something I'm good at. The hope that had briefly shone in my mom's eyes faded. Oh, we didn't know. But I went on. I do know a few great criminal defense lawyers who work on white-collar offenses. I'd be glad to provide you some names of people to talk to. I took out a legal pad and started jotting down the names and phone numbers of lawyers I knew and trusted. Good lawyers who would give Jackson a fair chance if he was ready to work with them. My mom finally stated what I had been waiting for her to say. We're so sorry, Daniel. We had no clue you would become a lawyer. We are very proud of you. I stopped writing and looked up. 13 years of silence, of being treated like I didn't exist, of them choosing Jackson above me over and over again. Now that they needed anything, they were suddenly proud. I said, with all due respect, Mrs. Stevens, my voice still professional but with an edge to it now. For 13 years, you've been able to be proud of me. You had 13 years to say sorry, to reach out, and to admit that what you did to me was wrong. You didn't want to. My dad moved around in an uncomfortable way. We believed you needed some time alone. We believed you wanted to be by yourself. I said no strongly. You blamed me for Jackson's mistakes and got rid of me because it was simpler than holding your golden child responsible. And now when he's in trouble again, you come to my office to seek for aid. The irony is almost poetry. My mom said we messed up. We know that now. We should have done things differently back then. But please remember that he is still your brother. I finished writing the references and pushed the paper across my desk. These 3 lawyers are all quite good. Any of them would work well for Jackson's case. I'll put a note in their files that you are coming because I told you to. That's all? My dad wanted to know. You're not going to. You're simply providing us recommendations. What did you think would happen? I asked. That I would sacrifice everything to save the brother who sat quietly while you blamed me for his sins. The brother who never called or wrote in 13 years. The parents who always picked him above me. We are family. My mom remarked in a distressed voice. I spoke family again, savoring the word. While I was living with Aunt Julie and Uncle Robert, I discovered something. It's not about blood that makes a family. It's about who is there for you. It's about who has faith in you when things go tough. In 1 year, they were more family to me than you were in 16. There was a lot of silence in my office. I could hear phones ringing and people talking outside, which is regular workplace noise. But in here, it seemed like time had stopped. Finally, I stood up to show that the meeting was concluded. I really hope Jackson has a decent lawyer and a fair result. No one should have their life ruined because of mistakes. But I'm not that lawyer, and I'm not going to act like we're a family that can just get over 13 years of you acting like I didn't exist. My parents stood up slowly. My mom was still crying. It looked like my dad wanted to say something, but he couldn't find the right words. My mom glanced around one more time as they got to the door. We genuinely are proud of you, for what it's worth. Think about all you've done. I did it without you, I said. That's what you need to get. At 16, my family threw me away, yet I lived. I paid for my own college and law school. I made this career out of nothing, and you didn't help me. So, yes, I'm proud of myself as well. But you don't receive points for that. They didn't say anything else and departed. I sat back down at my desk and stared at the door for a long time. Some of me felt bad. They looked so sad and shattered. But much of me felt like I had been right. They had thrown away their son and were now hunting for him, hoping he might save the boy they had safeguarded. They realized that the son they had cast away had become someone they needed. My secretary knocked and stuck her head in. Are you okay? That looked like a lot of work. Yeah, I responded, and I was surprised to see myself smile. I'm pretty okay, though. Were those the parents you told me about before? The ones that told you to leave? I nodded. They didn't know who I was until they came into my office. They came here because they were looking for a good lawyer to defend their other son. She whistled softly. That's some karma right there. Yes, I agreed. A little karma. I heard from one of the lawyers I told them about that Jackson did end up taking a plea agreement. He was sentenced to 18 months in a low-security prison and 5 years on probation. Not the best outcome, but better than it may have been. The lawyer told me that my parents had been asking about me. Wanted to know if there was a way to get back in touch. I urged him to tell them that I liked the idea, but no. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. My mom wrote on the mail. I was going to throw it away without reading it, but I was too curious. There were 4 pages in the letter. She said she was sorry for everything. For blaming me, for sending me away, for not staying in touch, and for choosing Jackson over me time and time again. She said they had been in denial about Jackson's problems, that they had been terrible parents to me, and that they had learned too late how horribly they had messed up. She said she understood if I never wanted to see them again, but she wanted me to know how bad they felt. She sent them pictures of me at graduation, at my first job, and other items that Aunt Julie must have sent them throughout the years. It looks like she stored them in an album. I read the letter twice and then put it in my desk drawer. Didn't answer. Haven't answered. Don't make plans. 3 weeks after I got that letter, my secretary called me. Your mom is also on the internet. Should I let her know you're busy? I stared at the LED on my phone that was blinking for 30 seconds. Then I answered. I said, Daniel Stevens, and kept it professional. Hey Daniel, it's Mom. She spoke with a trembling voice. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I have to tell you something concerning Jackson. He agreed to the plea deal. I already know. One of the lawyers I told you about brought it up. That's not it. She stopped. He wrote you a letter and requested me to send it to you. The business card you supplied us has your office address on it. Don't send it. I told him that this is incredibly hard for him. Daniel, he wants to say sorry for everything. For not standing up for you back then. I don't care what he wants to say sorry for. I stopped her. You need to know something. I'm not going to stay angry. I don't want someone to say they're sorry. I've moved on. Things are going well for me. You aren't a part of it. Jackson isn't a part of it, though. That's not a punishment. That's just how things are. For a moment, she didn't say anything. After that, we ruined our friendship with you. I get it now. But he's still your brother. No, I said calmly. I used to know him, and we had the same DNA. That's all. I hope he can figure out his life while he's in prison. But I'm not there for him, and I'm not there for you. Can we at least get together for coffee and talk? No. Goodbye, Mrs. Stevens. I hung up before she could say anything. I was a little shaky, but I was fine. More clear, in fact. That was 8 months ago. Since then, they haven't tried to get in touch with me. In February, Jackson began his sentence. My lawyer friend told me that he's doing well in minimum security. It seems that my folks go to see him every week. That's good for them. That's what parents are supposed to do. Be there for their kids. Last month, I was elevated to senior associate at my company. A bigger office, better cases, and a big raise. I'm working on a case right now that could change the way we sentence kids in our state. This case might make or break your career. When I got promoted, Aunt Julie and Uncle Robert drove 8 hours to take me out for a celebratory supper. Uncle Robert gave me a pen with my name on it, one of those fancy ones that lawyers use. He answered with a smile that it was for signing all those crucial legal papers. They were present when I got my degree. They helped me move into my first flat. They call me every Sunday simply to see how I'm doing. That's how a family looks. And it has nothing to do with blood. Last week, I went to court for a 16-year-old youngster who had his elder brother's drugs. The prosecutor wants to treat him like an adult. The boy said he didn't know what was in the bag that his sibling told him to hold. His parents trusted him. I also trusted him. I was able to get the charges down to a misdemeanor with probation and counseling that I had to go to. The kid gets to finish high school without having a crime on his record. His parents hugged me in the hallway outside the courtroom and cried with joy. That case was important to me. In this case, the smaller child is being blamed for the bigger child's mess. But this kid had parents that battled for him instead of giving him up. I made sure to let them know that. I told him to keep believing in him. Keep coming back. That's what counts. The mother looked at me and said, "You're a great lawyer. Your parents must be really happy." I smiled. People who matter are proud. That's all. So, that's how things are right now. My parents know where I am, but they can't get in touch with me. Jackson is doing his time. I'm making a living by supporting youngsters who really need someone to support them. Aunt Julie recently texted me to inquire what I want for supper on my birthday next month. I won Reddit. Not because I hurt them or got back at them. I won because I made my life so good that I don't miss them anymore. I'm not the kid they tossed aside. They'll never know me. And to be honest, I'm fine with that. Please subscribe if you like this video. It definitely helps the channel and us get you more and better stories. Thanks.